I'm Charlie Throckmorton. We're here in Claremore, Oklahoma at the PRCA Rodeo, the Will Rogers Stampede, 5-time PRCA Rodeo of the Year. I've got a legend because this is steer roping country, the rope, trip, and tie. And the legend with me today originally came out of Delaware, Oklahoma. He's a 5-time qualifier for the National Final Steer Roping, former average winner there that rode some of the famous horses of all time, Mr. Kelly Corbin. Kelly, when you started, Claremore was your first RCA full card membership rodeo.
Yes, sir.
Well, tell me what the feeling was like. 1964.
Yes, sir. Oh, I'd been to some rodeos on a permit from the time I was 16 up, but to actually get your card and be a full-fledged member, it was a big treat. And this rodeo here had always been significant to me because my folks were big fans of the PRCA or RCA back then, rodeo, and we always, from the time I was old enough to remember, come over here and watch the greats of that time rope.
Sure.
The Shaws, the Truetts, the McIntyres, all of those people, Toots Mansfield, and watch them rope. And so this rodeo, and along with about 3 or 4 in this circle around through here, it was just a treat to see them.
Kelly, when you graduated high school in 1964 from Delaware, your dad bought a really, really good horse that they had won the world on called Heelfly.
Yes, sir. He'd actually bought him before that. He bought that horse in '59 at Laramie, Wyoming.
Okay, 1964, you graduated from high school. Then you're entered in Cheyenne, which is in July.
Yes,
and
sir.
you win the average at Cheyenne, the daddy of them all. And you're a kid just out of high school. What did it feel like?
Basically, you're unconscious.
Well, you told me.
You don't, when you're at that age, and I'd been around it my whole life. I traveled with Everett 3 years prior to, getting my card.
Everett Shaw, the 6-time world champion, a legendary figure in the RCA, and goes back to the Cowboy Turtles.
I traveled with him, and so I'd been there and watched it, and it was just, I was just roping. Everett had always, I'd roped with Everett at his home pen, and he basically was my trainer. And he told me, he said, just go rope your roping. Then they got to beat you. You don't worry about what they do. You just go rope, then they've got to beat you. You're not trying to beat them. And so that's the way I roped. You're 18 years old. You're going with the way he trained you. We would get ready prior to Cheyenne at his house, and we'd let a score line out there at 25 feet, have slow steers, run them that way, and he coached you on every step that you did had a reason behind it.
Pretty good analogy there. You're only as good as the guys you rope against, right?
Yes.
But you had grown up around these guys, so you really weren't intimidated at all by them because you've been a part of them. Well, you took that average with a 59.6 on 3, and how much did the cattle weigh?
Cattle weighed close to right around 850.
850. Today's standards, last year at Cheyenne, they were pretty close to that mark right there, roping cattle half the size. So the times, it basically is rope, trip, and tie. It's elementary, right?
Right.
But some things have changed. Let's talk about...
It's speeded it up.
Speeded it up. Let's talk about the changes. We've changed in cattle, the change in ropes.
Right.
Okay.
Back when we started, you either had the choice of nylon ropes, which were made by Plymouth. There was Columbia made some ropes, but they weren't in the same class as Plymouth. And you either had that, or you had the 93 Sisla or Plymouth rope, grass rope.
Yeah.
And you didn't have these rope makers that make them like now. You went to the hardware store and you had them pull you off 30, 40, 60 feet, and you tied your own rope. You sewed your own burner on it. You grass ropes, you singed them. All the grass wickers off.
You get stickers in your hands.
And you rub them down with a gunny sack, and then you singe them again. And if you really wanted them slick and smooth, you took some wax paper and went up and down them.
Amazing.
And
the tie string, back then, they would plait the big tie strings. They were about that big around, correct?
Well, prior to that, there was a green treated rope that you could buy at the lumber yard. And you take that rope and unravel it into 3 strands, and then twist one strand back together, and then put the eye through it and up through it, and that's what everybody tied with, was just a green treated that you made at the house. Then they started taking, basically Sonny Davis was the first one I saw that he started plating them into a 4-plat.
Right.
And he got to taking the 93 grass ropes and 4-platting those, and he could really plat tight. And those strings were the next step. And then there was a guy came from California here, and he had a rope making machine, and he started making the nylon tight twisted ropes.
Okay, now back in the day, you're roping and tripping the steer for the flat fall. You would string the bottom foreleg, correct?
Yes.
Now they string the top foreleg. Try to save time.
That's faster. I mean, you can get it on it.
But the steer will be less likely to kick out stringing the bottom forefoot.
He'll also be less likely to strain on you.
That's
if
correct.
you string the top leg, he can still dig with the bottom leg. So that's going to make him have encouragement to want to kick and get up. If you take that away from him, you're automatically pulling him on his left shoulder, and he doesn't have that to dig with. So he's less likely to get up, and he's less likely to strain with you. But a lot of guys forsake, everything's to chance now. And so they string that top leg, throw those other two up there, and hope that they can get by.
Yeah, that's great. We talk about the difference in stringing the steers now. You don't see many jerk lines anymore.
No. They really don't want them to drag them very far.
Well, back in the day when you're roping an 850-pound steer, you're on a 40-foot score line. You want to fairground that steer. You want the momentum, do you not?
Yeah.
And then they use the jerk line because the horse is really logging him off fast.
We went more up than they do nowadays. We went more up the side of the steer, and when the steer peeled off to the right away from you, you peeled to the left.
Okay.
And you kept your forward momentum. In 850-pound steer, you wanted to try to use his forward momentum also.
But you didn't rope offset. You roped directly behind the steer.
Behind him.
Because if you rope directly behind the steer, the old adage says, a slick horn catch the strip is there.
Right.
And then you duck and dive. Okay, you went to the national finals in 1966. It was held at Veneta, Oklahoma that year.
Yes, sir.
And you won the average against the greatest ropers in the world. You were 108.1 on 6, and you were 23 years old at Veneta, Oklahoma.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about who you beat in the average that year.
Probably all the great legends, that's really legends, multiple world championships and everything.
I mean, we had
Don McLaughlin.
Don McLaughlin was
Shote
in there.
Webster.
Shote Webster, Sonny Davis, Jim Bob Altizer.
Yes.
The Wolves.
Yes. The best of the best.
Did you know you had the average one going into your last steer?
No.
You didn't think about it?
No. You don't pressure yourself.
Well, I'd like to tell that to a few guys in the modern day times. I'll tell you what. 'Cause sometimes the pressure gets thinking about the money, but if you concentrate on what you're doing, the rest will take care of itself.
That's right.
Well, Sonny Davis, you talk about Sonny Davis, he roped for the rounds and let the average take care of itself. Every
That's right.
time he went full speed. Did you rope more conservatively if you knew that you were in that average, or you just did your own roping?
It's kind of like the old saying, you dance with the woman that brought you there. You rope like the rope way you roped to get where you were at.
Okay, there were some great horses.
You didn't change up.
There were some great horses like Heel Fly. You were mounted on the best.
Yes.
Okay. Then, prior to you, had Peanuts and Popcorn that came from Fred Lowry.
Yes.
And then Everett Shaw, the great Shote Webster, won the titles on those horses. They were the dominant factors, right?
Right.
Other horses in the mix would be Bill Harlan's Twister Tip, the stud, right?
Yeah.
And then later,
the old black horse.
The black horse. Then later, yeah. Well, we can't say his name.
No.
Can't say the horse's name, but he was a dandy. Jim Snively had him.
And
Leonard Milligan.
Yes.
The gray horse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Roni Milligan.
Roni's Milligan.
Roni.
Yeah.
Another great horse back then, there was a horse named 9 Bar Buck.
Okay.
He was by Buck Hancock, come off of Triangle Ranch. Waldo Haythorne had that horse, and a guy named Crow Gordon in Wyoming bought him. And Everett got to know Crow, and when I started riding Heel Fly, Everett went and got 9 Bar Buck. And I had the privilege of riding him at home and roping off of him, and he was in that category. He didn't get the recognition that he should have got, but he was in the category of those horses.
You talk about Everett Shaw was your mentor and all that.
Yeah.
You knew Dick Truitt, right?
Yes.
The Iron Man.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've known all the great legends and wrote with them. Your assessment on Don McLaughlin. One word, how would you describe it?
Smart.
Smart roper. Clark McIntyre.
Really good groundwork.
Good groundwork. Choate Webster. Determined?
Choate was a winner.
A winner.
He was a winner.
He worked harder than everybody else to do it.
Yeah, he carried his rope different, but anything he went to do, he was the first one that started heeling in our country, and he used a little old loop, and you'd think he wouldn't catch anything, but he caught two heels better than anybody around here.
Olin Young.
Olin Young was a perfectionist.
He was fun to watch. Yeah.
Yes, he would. Everything about Olin, you could start from his rig to his saddle to his horse to his ropes. He was a perfectionist. Everything was perfect.
Okay, I'm going to bore you on the stats right now. 1964, when you won Cheyenne, you were 4th for the title of the world that year. You came back in 1965, you were 3rd for the title of the year. 1966, when you won the average, you were 5th for the world. 1967, you came back, you were 4th for the world. 1974, later on in your career, you were 11th for the world. Any year stand out other than that?
No. 67's last year I rode heel fly.
But I mean, your batting average is pretty darn good there.
Yeah.
It's like Marvin Canfield that year roped 100% because all the rodeos that he entered, he either won or placed, so he has a 100% batting average. So consistency does pay off.
It does, and being a horseback, and it still plays today.
Who started the trend of roping cattle really, really fast and stringing that top 4 foot? Do you think Sonny Davis really started the trend back in his day and then picked up a Sean and then Roy?
Yes. Sonny Davis was the first one that really just went all out. Every rope.
Rope for the round, let the average take care of itself.
And he looked wild, but he was, I had the privilege of roping with him in the practice pen a lot.
Here's a tough question I'm going to ask you right now. The greatest steer roper of all time, in your opinion, that you've seen in your day, or today?
Well, it's hard to say because they all got different environments at the time.
Well, that's true.
Probably overall, and I've always said that the champion, let's say back in the Everett Shaw day,
right,
could win today because champions find a way to win.
Absolutely.
And it's according to what the circumstances are, they adapt. But it'd be really hard to pick them out. I'd say between Everett and Choate in the earlier days.
In the early days.
And then nowadays, probably, let's say from the 70s, 80s, Guy Allen.
On Jeremiah. That was perfection. Perfection with Jeremiah.
And that horse right there is what made him.
I saw him in Duncan, Oklahoma in the year 2000, rope trip to Taiwan at 7.9, which was the record at the time.
Yeah.
Since been broken, but he did it twice. We're going to cover more history here. We're at Claremore, Oklahoma. Back in the days of the RCA, the predecessor of the PRCA today, 5-time PRCA Rodeo of the Year. This is Steer Open Country, a little rain and Clement tonight, a fireside chat with the legendary Kelly Corbin. We're back at Claremore, Oklahoma, talking with the steer roping legend Kelly Corbin, who has also been a PRCA rodeo judge. The heritage is there. Your dad, Earl, he had an eye for horses, and he had an eye for what you wanted to do, and I'm sure you listened to him because he do.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the tight races down in history, and you were mentioning great steer ropers, and you said at the time of the break in the camera, Trevor Brazil, you would have to put him in there.
Yeah, along with, in the next generation, Guy and Trevor are the two perfectionists.
Perfectionists.
I mean, when they're roping their game, you're roping for second.
Let's talk about the tightest races in rodeo history. Friend of yours, Joe Snively and Clark McIntyre came down to wire. 1961, $94 separated them.
Yes.
A treat for me was in 1990 when I was announcing with Clem McSpadden at the national finals. Guy Allen and Phil Line came down to the 10th and final round. Now, this was back when they had 2 loops, okay? Guy broke the barrier. Phil Line had to second loop his steer and won by the virtue of $85. The closest title race in history was Scott Snedeker and Guy Allen, where he won, Scott did, by $1.67. So we've had some tight races, and
Right.
when you get down to the 10th and final round, you've got to feel pressure. Maybe you didn't, but some guys do.
They do. I mean, you know, and I think some people, you know, maybe they rope better that way.
Maybe they do.
Maybe they do. But that was just the way I was trained, you know, growing up. And you just go rope your roping.
If you had to change any rule in steer roping, and we let it all hang out here, we're into nobody's rule with this interview, what would you change about steer roping?
They have to have a trip,
Have to have a
and
trip.
it has to be between the hip and the hock.
Okay, a flat fall and a trip. Are you an advocate of the 2-loop rule or 1 loop?
In nowadays time, and the arenas are roping in, probably 1 loop.
1 loop. It's faster?
That and other humane reasons.
I understand. Well, all the technology has changed and everything, but it's still, the equipment's changed, the cattle's changed, the cowboys are changed, the younger generation coming on, but it's still the same scenario. It's
Right.
rope, trip, and tie.
Charlie, it's like a lot of people still like to live in the past.
Right?
And I think the past is good to keep for history-wise
It is.
in reference. But it's like I tell them, you know, you got to change with the way it is now. And the cattle are smaller, so you got to do things different.
I want them to remember this in this interview. The 2 original events of rodeo, even before the PRCA got started, even before the Cowboy Turtles, even before the RAA, was single steer roping and bronc riding, the first 2 original events. Right, Kelly?
Yes.
That's how it is. So we're here in the new millennium, in the 19th year. Thank you for being here.
You bet.
You're a pleasure, man.
Thank
I'm
you,
telling
sir.
you, you're a legend and one of my heroes. Kelly Corbin, a 5-time national finalist and an average winner and a Cheyenne champion. I call him Heel Fly for the nickname. He rode the best.